Good evening and welcome to Dark Hour Paranormal. Folks, I am your host this evening, Michael Roser, and first and foremost, I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. Those of you who are returning, welcome back, and newcomers alike, welcome. We have a very interesting show this evening, and I'll be honest, I've been very excited leading up to this night for a very specific reason in respect to the topics that my guest and I are going to cover the next hour. And I implore you to not just take some of these things at face value. Yes, we go far as we get into the world of esoterics. And a lot of times, because what we have behind us in respect to a foundation, belief system, so forth, this could actually cause some sort of limitation when we have the perception of something brand new in front of us. And although what my guest tonight may be talking to you about is not something you're unfamiliar with, there is an absolutely new, direct, positive angle I feel that Peter Benson, my guest this evening, has been able to create through his work, his modalities, and his energy and passion. Now, before we get into the cream of what we're going to talk about, because believe me, Peter is an incredibly diverse individual, very intelligent, has quite the accolades behind him. You name it. But, you know, it's one of these things where this individual hasn't just garnered these accolades for the sake of holding them. He's done something with them, and he's done big things with them. So tonight we're going to be talking about that at length. And of course, the discourse of how we get into this, all right, begins with a quick bio about Peter Benson. Now, Peter Benson is the inventor of healing tools, which can also, among many other things, eliminate PTSD, emotional issues, heartbreak, clear entities, protect an individual, amplify healing sound frequencies, and create calm. Peter has successfully worked with a multitude of people to clear up and positively alter their energy, as well as working with first responders who use his chill pill tool, which facilitates trauma healing. That sounds very interesting. Peter recently appeared on an advancement TV segment with host Ted Danson on Bloomberg TV. Peter was a normal mechanic and technician engineer when he experienced a major awakening process that opened up his connection to his higher self and the Angelic Realm. He discovered his angelic origins as part of Archangel Michael's Army of Light. That sounds familiar. Isn't that interesting how that goes? Never too far away, right? Guided by Archangel Michael and Ascended Masters, Peter was guided on how to create profound Tensor technology with palpable healing properties. His research and creations led him to build Tensor rings, all cubits, crystal infused pendants, Merkaba healing coils, sound frequency amplifiers, PTSD restoratives, and more. Now, Peter speaks about these healing modalities. He's extremely articulate when he gets into this. And I've seen another interview that he's put out somewhat recently, and I have to back that 100%. And he's he's often a very highly sought out guest when it comes to some of these worldwide events that we all enjoy and entertain as we, sit in this spiritual field. Peter Benson, folks, I'd like you to meet this individual. Absolutely incredible. Peter, thank you for being on the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, I'm a little still in the fog here, but I am getting through it, my friend. I appreciate, you being here with us tonight. I know you have a lot to talk about. Certainly, visually, we start with that first. I see that you have some sort of contraption behind you. And of course, you and I might be able to talk about this at certain length, but we'll get into some of that and why, you use tools in this respect. But, certainly we understand that this is all original work, right? You've invented this particular modality. Is that correct?
Yes. We'll get into that in a second. I want to thank you, Michael, for having me on first and foremost. I love the intro. I love the music to it. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me on. And a great bio read. It was awesome. Thank you. So yes and no. The technology is actually not my own invention. The Tensor rings are actually brought in originally back in 1957 by John Archibald Wheeler. And he was a nuclear physicist. He was part of the A-bomb program. He was the one who coined the term black hole. He's quite part of the system way back when, and he discovered the energy of a wire actually connected to a ring size, and how an energy field was created by that ring. but it was nothing that they could actually optimize or utilize as anything at the time. So Slim Sperling took that idea, and it's like, okay, he went back and he found that information to take a single metal ring and braze it onto itself, and it turns into a tensor field, which is what which John about Wheeler found was a tensor field, but he didn't know what to do with it. And with a straight wire, single wire ring, you have a positive side and a negative side, and a tensor field in the middle, like a soap bubble. So this is what they found. And Slim Sperling basically did a bunch of testing on the positive side of things, and the positive energy coming off the ring was immense and extremely impactful to the human body. And he found.
Before you go on, let me just ask you very quickly. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's something I'm curious. Are you working with orgone energy in any respect, the way that Wilhelm Reich might have defined it?
I do. I've made orgone pyramids based with the tensor technology in it. Yes. But I don't normally do the pendants aren't that because they're not multi-layer, organic and organic. That's not the way those are designed.
Okay. Interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
Oh, no worries. No, please interrupt if you have a question as we go through. We don't want to miss anything.
I appreciate it.
So what happened is one of the individuals working with Slim Sperling took one of those tensor rings that had a positive and negative side and ended up putting it by accident, the negative side, to his heart, and his heart stopped.
Hi.
So he fell to the floor. They ran over to him, flipped the ring over, and his heart started back up. And it was like, okay, no more of that. We're done. So what they found is, so you have a single ring like this, and that's actually positive, negative one side. So what he did at that point was took one wire really long, folded it over. So now you have energy going in both directions.
Yes.
Twisted it clockwise.
Yes.
Right, and then twisted it to a certain wind, and then from there cut it to the cubit lengths. And the cubit length that Slim Sperling used was the cubit length in the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Okay.
There, I'm not sure if you're familiar. There was a granite boss. I'm not sure if it's outside of the King's Chamber or in the King's Chamber, but it was like 72 inches tall, and it was 20.5 inches in the diameter. Right, and those are the measurements they were using to build the pyramid with.
Now, these are sacred measurements for all intents and purposes, correct?
Correct. Yes,
that's right. Okay.
So Slim used those particular measurements, and he coined that one the sacred, the sacred cubit, coming from the Great Pyramid, and that was the tensor ring. Well, that was a tensor ring that he utilized. Now that tensor ring he had tested too. Go ahead. What do you got?
No. I'm kind of soaking this in. This is really fascinating to me. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you again there, but my God, this is really interesting because everything you're talking about, I can picture it. I can picture it entirely.
Yeah, it feels like memories coming back. For those that are, it's like, as I'm describing it, it feels like memories and understandings that are just coming back. So what Slim did is he was testing it on individuals, and he found that this particular tensor ring worked on the physical body really, really good, to the point where he was healing bones in like an hour, breaks and stuff like that. And these are in his books, a bunch of reports, like complete miracle cures in his books from these tensor rings. And then he had 2 labs test it. There was one in Germany that tested it, and one of the labs in Lockheed Martin. So
yeah, makes sense.
So they had friends in places, high places. So he had it tested. They found that particular tensor ring resonated at 144 megahertz.
Okay.
So it was a resonant frequency of hydrogen, right? And it was just really interesting that, it's like, okay, so we got this. This is cool. And he started, once he actually had more documentation and understanding of what the actual background is, that, okay, so now Wheeler knew there was a tensor field. So now we have this tensor field with the winding, right? So when you wound it in a positive way and then bridged the wires back onto each other, it created a positive field on both sides. So you got rid of the negative, right? So you can hold the one ring, this little ring right here, either direction, and it won't hurt anybody.
Huh.
Wow,
you guys really...
turns into a positive.
You
Yeah.
really thought
He,
this out, and I think obviously working on that level, you sort of have to, not to bring it into any sort of focus at the moment, but one of the things we understood about certain Black projects, especially when it came to Montauk, because they were using frequencies almost
yeah.
exclusively for quite some time, it was very empirical experimentation, and kind of what you mentioned there. They put the connections together, heart stopped, oh, let's not do that again, and switch it around, and they sort of figure things out. But within that,
Yeah.
explorative, they were able to come to certain conclusory ends with some of the
Yeah.
technology, and some of the how do I put it, the rings of energy, these cyclical cycles that they were working with, creating and playing with. Not to get too off topic, but it certainly reminds me, and yes, it is very similar in a sense to having a recall or some sort of deep-seated memory come up. It does feel like when you get into some of this research for some of us,
Yeah.
okay, and others just don't have any sort of description for it, but they experience it, right? Now,
Yep.
I noticed in one of your interviews you had mentioned that, recently your awakening process had began. I think it was around 8 years ago you mentioned. Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit of that particular experience with us, coming from, what we would consider the humanistic side, going into the more imposed spirituality, and why you believe this may have happened for you at that point in your life when it occurred?
Well, as you described, it's like I was a mechanic. So working with my hands, working with metals, working with torches. So I had a background in metallurgy a little bit, not, in-depth lab style, but, hands-on. And then I started working in as an engineering technician,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at that point, it's like, okay, cool. But life started throwing me, things in my life started changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it wasn't for the better. So I was going through the dark night of the soul. A lot of people go through it. So you end up you lose faith, and then you start, you're going down that hill, and it's like, okay. I started reading books, Brian Weiss, Michael Newton, where they're talking about life between lives, life after death, and the stuff that's going on in the spirit world. So I was like, okay, if this is true, that means there is a lot more to who we are than there is anything else. So I read those books, all of what I could find available for them, and I started understanding some of that stuff. I started reading Dolores Cannon's books with the
I love Dolores.
regressions,
Mm-hmm.
and I love her books. Absolutely
Mm-hmm.
amazing books. So at that
Incredible.
point, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I went through this part where it's like, okay, doing meditations, trying to feel the energy, trying to have things come through, and it really wasn't working for me, and it was really slow. And then I found Slim Sperling's work, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm a mechanic. I can do this. I can make this. I can, it's like because his all of his stuff is open sourced, and which is why I can make it, and anybody else can make it. So
Okay.
this is
Sure.
really interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
So I started making them, but they didn't work. It's the thing is, it's like my energy wasn't high enough. My frequency wasn't high enough to create an etheric anchored tool at a high vibration. So these tools are pretty high vibration, and that's where it comes in.
That's curious that you mentioned that, because I did have a question surrounding that idea. Obviously, again, it's something you had mentioned. It took you about 6 months to create an item of adornment that held the vibrational intention that you would really set for it. Um,
Yeah,
you're mentioning that your vibration wasn't high enough, and believe me, this is somewhere
yeah,
that many people sort of get caught up. They don't really understand the definition of our own vibration. I'm playing the devil's advocate a little bit here, but
oh,
in
absolutely.
respect to clarity, a lot of people have asked, well, how do I raise my vibration? Now, before we go into that very quickly, a lot of people have given suggestions as meditation, go into the silence, maybe pick a book up and just allow yourself to set in that moment. These are things that are very applicable and attainable for the
Yes.
average person, um, but yet at the same time, what did you do to raise your frequency to the point where you felt that the intentions you were setting forth to imbue these particular instruments of healing were actually taking on that particular characteristic?
Okay. That's a really good question because it took a while for things to roll out. Like I said in that interview, it took me like 6 months to really figure out what I was doing. And when I first started it, I was looking for an escape, trying to do something to keep myself busy and try to do these really cool energy tools and stuff like that. Um, my mindset was, my logical mind wanted to do it. The problem is I didn't have a positive mindset and I was still working on the negative. So I was working on changing that. So I ended up going from the negative mindset to a more positive mindset, putting more of for a while I was literally doing one of the mantras, you know,
Hmm.
I am divine light, aham brahma. And I would literally just sit out there, and as I was working, I'd have that mantra going around in my head to keep myself away from the negative mental thought processes that were going around in my life. Because those will dominate your thought process if you do not control them. So I ended up doing that for a long time. And that's where I ended up coming out of the negative energy and start going into a positive energy, just changing the way I was thinking. Because the reality of your thoughts is the reality you live.
There is so much truth to that, Peter. It's so stark in front of us. We live that reality, right? But in so
Correct.
many ways, people are unconscious of this fact. And I've actually had people fight
Yes.
me on the idea that thoughts manifest, which is fine, and there's no reason to get in
Yeah.
any sort of confrontation, intellectually or otherwise. I mean, it's basically saying the sky is blue, and if somebody says no, it's not. I mean, I know technically it's not, okay, but let them figure it out, for themselves, and perhaps when they're ready to undertake that sort of
Yeah.
conversation, we'll be here to do it. But again, having this idea where we can actually control our thoughts, and through that control we create the exact life that we want to live, is very empowering and incredibly scary for a lot of people. But that's what you're
Yes.
suggesting: get a hold of your thoughts, right?
Get a hold of your thoughts. It's the hardest thing you've ever done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Controlling it really is. It's one of the hardest things to do because a lot of times we run around living our lives on autopilot and just respond, not really
Hmm.
paying attention to the responses we're doing until after the fact and go, oh crap, what I didn't mean to do that. And then you, and this domino effect happens and then you have to live with it. So you have to actually really focus on being the person you want to be, and keep the memory, keep the mindset and the
Hmm.
positive vibes in the mental frame. It's
I absolutely
if you
agree
have a
with
hard
that. And
time.
no,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm sorry. I think that folks out there listening, listen to what Peter's saying, because he's giving it to you very minimalistically. But within what he does, you can check out his website and the corresponding affiliations down in the description. Go further into this, because I know there are a lot of you who have been asking me about this question. And I feel that Peter is a very clear source on how to perhaps wrangle something so intangible to us, at least at first glance. So please, this isn't the end of the conversation, but I'd like you to explore this a little bit further, those of you who are very curious and have expressed this interest to me. Very quickly, angel wings. You bring up a very good point here, and I was going to talk to you about this, Peter, of course.
Yes.
She says, frequency music higher than 432 hertz, of course. Cleanse and balance chakras to cleanse R2. Frequency music does a lot of this, to, along with crystals combined, both raises your vibes. I think I understand what you're saying here, within what you mentioned. um Back on what you said. So most music is, we're looking at 440 hertz. Okay. And
Yep.
we've sat in this frame, and we know that there's a history behind why everything slid up 8 hertz at one point as
Yes.
our root note C, and A, and so forth as we go forward. Does that fit into your construct at all? Are you working with frequencies that are registered at 432, which apparently was the natural harmonic, at least within the earth? I think this was there was a big part of that. Or are you working within our traditional 440 system?
As far as sound is concerned, we utilize one of the tensor rings that's out there in the wild. It's called the Teotihuacan cubit, and it actually resonates at 333 megahertz. And this one, that
Okay.
particular ring is the description of it changing the color of sound.
Okay. Okay.
So And the way we've experienced this one, and I've actually used to do a sound bath. This was part of my path, was going to a sound bath. That person brings up sound. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
was going to a sound bath every couple of weeks just to actually, let my body, just be in that vibration, help raise my vibration. It wasn't just mental; it was everything else. You have to really pursue it. And I did. I pursued it in meditation. I did the sound baths. I did the mental, the constructs.
Sure.
It took a lot of work. So going to the sound bath, I was creating a couple of these tensor rings that were at that frequency. I brought them over to the lady who was doing the sound bath, and I was like, okay, here's 4 of them. Let me know how they work. Right. So she had 14 bowls, the higher chakras and lower chakras. So she had
Mm-hmm.
all the chakra bowls there. 2 days later, she texts me back, and she says, "Can you make me 10 more?" So what we found,
Well, something happened there.
oh yeah, what we found out was these tensor rings, these sacred, the Teotihuacan cubit, the change in the color of sound literally changed the way the sound was produced in the bowls. So this works for crystal and brass. I'm guessing it'll work
Okay.
for gongs and all that. But what we found on the crystal bowls is it made them louder. It's like plugging them into an amp. It made them louder, which is interesting.
It is
On
interesting.
top,
Okay.
and then on top of that, it made them resonate longer. So you spool it up, and you could time it. The bowl would spool up, and you could actually, without a ring, time the time it times it decrease its the volume of the bowl. When you put it inside the ring, the spool up time would stay there and hang and hang and hang, and it would just sit there and just vibrate really loud. And the sound of it was actually shifted.
Huh.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
As a
believe me.
musician and the sound engineer myself, my mind starts going in many different directions. I mean, the first thing that I've certainly come to understand is that sound, as I understood it, at least in respect to learning about it and utilizing it, was a very
Yeah.
one-dimensional thing, because most people listen to that final mix, right? They don't go into the studio and the tracking and
Yeah.
getting the mix. Stereo tracks. That's it. It's
Yep.
stereo. So, I always had this perception in my head that there was something uh, very itself. Start understanding and learning more about frequency and sonics and so forth.
Yeah.
You realize that sound is actually 3, 4, 5, 6 dimensional. I mean, you can go all the way up or down these frequencies that are in our reality, because sound really holds together a lot of what we have for reality. And to verbal altercations with certain physicists about this particular concept. They say, well, you're misusing the words vibration and frequency. Those don't work in respect to what you're trying to describe, which, again, I understand that might be a conversation for another point. But even people like Captain Randy Kramer, who is a well-known secret space program whistleblower, has mentioned in many of the lectures that he's done that at the end of the day, it's not about frequency and vibration. It's about amplitude. Okay. Do you feel that there's some truth behind that it's not necessarily the way we describe frequencies, vibrations, and what have you? It's more about the amplification of this energy?
So the way I understand what we're talking about here is if you understand cymatics,
Mm-hmm.
cymatics is different frequencies creating different patterns
Mm-hmm.
in the physical matter. So I would say the frequency and vibration definitely do make a difference. Amplitude, I'm not saying won't. Amplitude is
Mm-hmm.
where you get your power from, right? It gets you your power for that wave, right? It goes higher waves, gives you
That's
more
right.
energy there. So what we're finding here with the tensor rings is, if you look at energy waves as harmonic and disharmonic, what we're seeing is, for life energy, it feels like these tools, these tensor field energies, it's like this qubit for the sound. It looks like it actually it kind of moves the disharmonic energy to a more harmonic frequency and
Interesting.
removes anything that would be a negative impact. If we can extrapolate from what Slim Sperling brought in with the sacred qubit and healing the physical body, in a very accelerated rate by just having a tensor ring going over your hand. I mean, it just
Are
feels
you
that this is more of an energy field kind of thing. Yeah.
are you utilizing phase cancellation in any of that? I mean, obviously the tools that you've created sound like they're quantum based as well as here in the physical with us. I mean, I've come across electronic equipment that sat in the quantum field as well as the physical, and we're really actually quantum machines. Um, is that, I mean, again, phase cancellation? Are you using any of
Yeah.
that sort of idea within your tensor rings and some of the other devices that you've created?
Not through my intention. These are all these tools have the etheric blueprint, so these are based in a higher vibration already. This is where they come from. They have already been, and the other producers of these tools have stated such. These are etheric tools, so these blueprints are beyond our reality.
And that's again one of those things that we have access to, but it's so difficult to bring it to the table and even sometimes show other people. But
Yes.
as we go forward collectively, and many people have talked about this since at least the 80s, from what I understand, we're moving into a new paradigm entirely. What that looks like, everybody sort of has their own perception of it, and we're still finding out as we go forward. But some of those realms that are in higher vibration may be more accessible to us here in the physical. I mean, I understand that a lot of what we're doing at this point in time is literally kind of fishing out for those frequencies, pulling them down, to give you the visual, and anchoring them here to create that new pattern of energy and reality that we will then move into, or are moving into, as we talk even this moment. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's it,
Um,
it's interesting to look at some of what you've created and the theories behind it.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you again, playing the devil's advocate in some respect. I try to think of things that
Again?
people
Okay.
think outside of perhaps the field. If I were to garner one of these tensor rings, is it certain that it works for me? Is it something that I can walk around unconsciously on my body, such as like a purple plate, where it just, it's mixing it with my energy every day? I don't have to consciously give it any action, or is it something I need to sit and meditate with, work with in a very specific fashion? How does that work?
Okay. So I'll put here that
Oh,
pendant
cool.
there. That is a Archangel Michael pendant.
Hmm.
Now, that pendant, in general, when anybody puts it on, automatically gets a calming sensation, and you feel like you're standing in the presence of Michael. You feel calm, you feel safe, you feel protected, and you just feel like your heart is able to be open. And that's just because of the crystals involved inside that tensor field. Okay.
Interesting.
So it really doesn't matter if you feel it or not feel it. And I've had people put them on and say, I can't feel it. And the next person will pick up the same one, and it's like, oh, I feel this. This is amazing. The pendant's right there. That's not changing the pendant. The pendant's not going anywhere. It's not changing its frequency. So what'll happen is it's like, and I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was, if you look at these tools as they are as powerful as they need to be. All right,
Hmm.
this is the way they were designed. This is the what they are. This is the etheric blueprint for these tools. Now, if you're really sensitive, you're going to feel it the moment you touch it and hold it in your hand. You'll feel it. If
Hmm.
you're not really sensitive, you'll put it on and then you'll feel a difference. But if you're not sensitive at all, you're going to put it on, and what'll happen is over a week or 2 weeks, you'll start noticing a difference in how you perceive.
Ooh.
Now you got to look at it in a different way, because you're mentally blocked. If you're not feeling energy, you're mentally blocked from actually feeling the energies that are around us because you've never been taught how to deal with it. This will
Hmm.
shield you from other people's energy. And over time, if you wear it every day, what'll happen is your energy field will get used to not being bombarded.
Is this
Then
creating
you can
some sort
start
of
feeling.
energetic natural immunity that I mean, maybe one day you could even take it off as the power object that it is and know that I could go through a day because I'm already at a certain level? Or how does that fit into
So
certain things?
these pendants, eventually, if you buy one, when you get to that particular point, you're going to be able to wear it to a point and say, okay, I remember how that feels. And you'll
Ah.
automatically be able to maintain that without having the tool. And this is to these are training wheels for us in understanding energy. That's all they are. They're not supposed to be a permanent fix. These are to help get us there. No batteries required. Don't plug it in and then just wear it. So, I mean,
I love
it's
it.
the funniest thing, but it's what it is.
That,
And it definitely changes the way you perceive people, the way you respond to people, because you're no longer being bombarded by other people's energy.
that makes a huge difference in people's
Makes a
lives. And
huge difference.
it's literally night and day for,
Yeah.
I think, just about anybody once you actually effectively remove that background distortion, that noise, that din.
Yeah.
And constantly people are asking, different sources, how can I protect myself from this daily din? And, continue to build my own energy in a sort of respectful, comfortable, compartmentalized sort of place without shutting out the rest of the world. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And it reminds me of, certain people that have used Reiki, and they use the different symbols. Okay. Chokure, Hansha Seisho Nen. And after a while, when they sit down to do that particular healing, they don't need the symbol itself anymore, because they just know the feeling, tap right into the energy, and boop, there we go. But
Yep.
Your adornments there, your pendants are absolutely gorgeous. It's certainly not something that I would want to take off, even if that was an option. I'll tell you what, man, very, very beautiful work that you've instilled into these. Now, from what I understand, sorry, go ahead.
That was as we're going past, before we go too far beyond this
Yeah.
one. This is actually the anklet, right? These are anklets. These are the Archangel Metatron anklets. These were the first tool, and this was my first channel from Archangel Metatron. He came in and told me to create anklets out of a tensor ring, put 5 crystals in it, very specific, and then put copper mesh over it. When the description from Archangel Metatron is to keep your frequency yours while we go through this transition. So, yeah. And the tensor ring I created to house this actually helps ground you. So when you put the anklets on, you feel grounded. And you also helps you balance your chakras at the same time. And with a couple sensitive individuals we've had giving me some really good feedback on visualization and how it works. If you visualize your physical being looking like a torus field coming off of your heart, right? You have this donut energy field around us. And we have energy coming in the crown chakra and coming in our root chakra. And this is where we're feeling all the energy around us. The anklets literally cap your torus. So it plugs the top and it plugs the bottom, and it recirculates your own energy inside that field.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So you can walk around in your own energy bubble while feeling grounded. And you don't, the funny thing is, it's like you walk into a conference with these things on, you don't feel the room. You walk into grocery shopping or go into Costco or whatever it is, into the big box store, you don't feel everybody's anxiety.
That's got to be amazing.
It is. They're very cool. I don't go out without them. I do not go outside without those on.
That's something I think I might have to invest in, because not only would I like to experiment with that, it working would be a huge benefit for my life. Obviously, dealing with a lot of sensitive natured things, and God, you can walk into a bowling alley and I can feel somebody with certain emotions on their sleeve, if you will. I mean, I can just look at somebody, and I'm sure people have these same experiences, but it actually makes it more difficult to define where that threshold is, where your emotions begin, where another's starts as well. And it's not for lack of practice or education. It's just a matter of sensitivity. So, I mean, I think I'm going to have to invest in one of these guys. And I implore you to do the same, all of you out there watching, because if Peter has what he says he has, come on, we got to try this, man. We got to try this.
Yeah. These are intention tools. So, like you said, you can see somebody and feel their emotions that are on their arm, right? They're just walking around with it. Mm-hmm. When you're wearing a tool like this, you can actually literally use intention to just go out and reach out and touch somebody through intention, and actually feel that they're dealing with it, but you're not, you can actually sense it, feel it, but you're not going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to be, the energy is not coming over you. Like if they're having a bad day, you're not going to feel like you feel crap. Or if they're super happy, you're not going to all of a sudden start giggling because what the hell's going on? It's like, it's not like that. You can actually reach out and touch somebody and actually get an idea of who they are, how they're feeling without absorbing anything.
This feels like armor, in a
It
sense.
is. That's I, I put it like this. It's like if you're wearing like an Archangel Michael pendant, which actually does create an energy field just over your skin. So
Hmm.
you have a physical body, you have an emotional field just above your skin. The pendant creates a energy field just above that.
You
So
gotta
it's
be
like
kidding
an
me.
no, I'm not kidding you. That's what the
Oh, I
pendants
gotta
do.
see that.
So
Wow.
what I tell people is like if you're super sensitive and you really want to get going on your journey, you get yourself a pair of anklets and you get yourself a pendant and now you're dual layered armor, your energy armor. It's like wearing angelic armor. It's just like you just walk around and just then you get so sensitive after a while it's just like then you get overwhelmed by just the silliest little things and it's just like okay, I got this. Calm down. It's just because you become super sensitive because you're no longer being bombarded.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And again, I lend you a lot of credit here because, as I kind of mentioned prior to this beginning of the show, there are a lot of gadgets that have come into,
Yeah.
popularity over, God, I mean, the last 30, 40, 50 years, depending on where you were looking,
Yeah.
From magnetic rings to certain wrist, excuse me, bracelets that perhaps contract and, sit on meridians. Do you take any of that physiology into consideration when you're creating these tools, or is it purely intuitively guided?
It's messages that I've been channeled to. After once I get like a message,
Hmm.
um, it'll come down to intuition. I'll start doing research and understand, and I'm like, okay, I have all this. What do I do with it? And then I'll just sit on it and let the energy come through. It's truthfully the biggest one that came through lately was this one here, and this pendant here was actually a another channeled guided message, and it was a different archangel this time. And this is the post traumatic stress, and I don't want to say PTSD because it's not a disorder. I want to call it
Okay,
as
right.
it's a post traumatic stress and healing. So a PTSH pendant, it's like a post traumatic healing pendant. And what came through was it's like I was requested to make a pendant for post traumatic stress because I've had a bunch of people come to me and it's like, yes, that chill pill is amazing and it helps people with post traumatic stress. It helps them a lot. It removes the anxiety. It just you put it on and it's just like you just feel all of a sudden all the energy in your body. If you're all stressed out, you just feel it just rush out of you. You just feel it hit the floor, and
Huh.
you just all of a sudden feel, oh, this is cool.
Interesting.
And that's the way the chill pill works, and it is exactly what it is. And you just feel like put it on, you just feel like chill. It's just like you feel like, oh, cool, okay, I'm done.
You see, you level out. You level out, and
Oh
there's some sort of
God, yeah,
grounding. Yeah, that
yeah,
happens with that.
yeah.
That's incredible. I honestly, God, can't wait to have this experience myself, and I will get into that. And of course, when I do, folks, I'll be sharing that on the show, and I guarantee you, it's going to be an amazing experience. Because as soon as you showed me the first pendant, by the way, Peter, I could feel
Yeah.
Archangel Michael off of that. Now, for some of you listening out there, I know that's a little arbitrary, but having certain connections with those energies, you recognize them very readily. It's not a matter of whether I'll do something with that information at the time. It's a matter of just knowing that you can feel it. Um, very, very, very strong but soft energy
Yeah.
with this particular pendant that you had mentioned and showed us. Just look at the detail on that. That's absolutely gorgeous. And to know that it's not
Yeah.
just a beautiful piece of art, but it has a very practical application that can heal us at the deepest levels. My friend, you've certainly got something here.
Yeah. Well, this is you kind of put it in a funny manner. This is a power tool. This is one of the
Mm-hmm.
Tim the Tool Man Taylor going, ah, ah.
I think of Carlos Castaneda. You know what I mean? With Don
There
Juan,
you
and
go.
we got power tools, we got power objects, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a power tool. It's what it is. And it's a funny thing is if you're wearing one, and this is, I've had so many of my customers actually come back and tell me it's like I walk around with it, and people will look at it and ignore it, keep going. But then there are people that are awake, that are on their journey. They'll see it, they'll stare at it, and they'll say, "Where did you get that?" Because the light emanating from it triggers them. It's
Hmm.
just the power of the tool.
Huh. Now, the curious thing that, we can sit and talk about this, for quite some time, going back and forth between the intuition and the actual materials that, you've used to create this and the significance of that as well. I
Yep.
see a very strong synergistic connection here between the interpretation of the right side of the brain, which is, mostly irrational or intuitive, right? And the left side of the brain, which is logical and looking for something more grounded in observable reality at the very least.
Yes.
In this, is that the right perception that I'm getting off this particular tool? And when you were creating these, how do you define, how this sort of sits with those energies, or don't you? Or it just sort of becomes something natural?
They're natural for me now. But when I was actually developing them, I was actually, we go back to the Slim Sperling. The tensor ring that this one is made out of is called the last cubit. This cubit is actually working with the emotional field, your heart chakra, your higher heart, your etheric body, and your aura. So the tensor ring, just the copper itself, is working specifically on those energies. So you're wearing one right at your heart chakra, and it's going to work on your heart chakra the minute you put it on. Now, what the one thing we didn't really cover yet was that the tensor rings, it's like I was saying, that has that energy field that comes through like you're blowing soap bubbles, right? When you're blowing soap bubbles, the soap hangs in the middle of that ring. Now, picture that as an energy field inside of that tensor ring.
Okay.
Now, that energy field that's wavy and all this looks like, looks like a Stargate kind of a portal there, right? That is actually intersecting those crystals in there and amplifying the energy of all of those crystals. So you can have this small piece of crystal, but it's amplified.
That's some beautiful craftsmanship too, as well here. Is that all copper that you're using
That
there? Or
is
do you have other elements
That's copper with brass at the top.
with brass?
I'm brazing them together. I'm using the brass because it is a nice metal and it's really kind of goldish and it gives it a nice little color to it.
Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Now, when you create these objects, as you're obviously, everyone is unique, I'm sure. You have some formulas perhaps that you work with as you go into the creation of something like this. Perhaps it's guided, perhaps it's, some intellectual thing that you've worked with as you've moved forward as an engineer. How do you particularly quantify the energy imbued into these items by your process? How do you know when a piece of jewelry or another example of tensor tool is at its maximum and ready to be in someone's life definitively?
The way I do it is each one of these is actually cut specific. They're very, I'm measuring them out to like a tenth of a millimeter, right? They're very, 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 very accurate. So when I'm creating them, the energy repeatability with the tensor rings is always there.
Okay.
So that is your logical brain side. And the energy of the tensor rings has been quantified with all kinds of producers of tensor rings all around the planet. So the tensor rings already have their energy and have been proven and brought in through dowsers and other empathic individuals and other people that way. So the tensor rings have been proven scientifically to have these energies. So that's the logical brain. So now we have to make that jump to say, okay, crystals do too. So now this logical brain is actually saying, okay, it's creating this tensor field, which we can measure, and we're putting crystals in it. And now this tensor ring is actually amplifying a crystal. But it's just like you'd have to carry a 5-pound piece of rock of one of these crystals to feel the amount of energy that one of the pendants puts out. It's just like...
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
So it gives you both sides of your brain right there, and it gives you the beauty and the energy, and it gives you the logic and the measurements and the quantifiable energy field from it.
As I would expect, to be honest with you, it was an interesting question that I thought of as I was going through some of the research, and I had the assumption that this was a balanced effort, if you will. And I think a lot of people who work on these type of tools, if you will, maybe not as extensively as you do, seek to find that sort of balance within the objects that they're creating, maybe being more successful or less successful depending on the endeavor. So that's very interesting to note. And of course, I think there's more significance that goes behind that in respect to the overall population, somebody who might be able to pick this up who isn't initially conscious of that type of energy or isn't sensitive, but it can still work for them on the level that it's supposed to. And once you put this thing on, and you go through that initial process, who knows what kind of world or window this opens up to you at that point, because you've already started to work with your energy in this fashion.
Yep. No, you're absolutely correct on that one. You're absolutely correct. Now, the one caveat I would say with that is you need to be on the path. You need to start working on, your mental constructs, your positive energy flow, your positive mental attitude. You have to be on the path, right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
once you actually clear your energy, if you're still on a negative energy path, all you're clearing is your energy for the negative energy, and it's going to do is amplify the negative side of things for you. If you have a negative thought process, you're going to bring negative things into your life. It's like, The Secret says it's a positive mental attitude. This is already in my life, and bring it into your life. That's the kind of thing that happens. It's like if you're not there, the tool's going to help you basically clear your field to get what you want. And if you're wanting something in a negative attitude, you're going to get that negative attitude in an accelerated manner.
That makes sense too, because if for no other reason, the universe, as I understand it, is a mirror for our
Yep.
intention, our thought. You say you want something, right? Again, from The Secret, you get the experience of wanting something. You don't actually get the experience of having it. So,
Right.
in some senses, even working with this type of instrument that you have in front of us here, you have to have some understanding of that particular construct, that architecture. I think,
Yep.
even if you're not versed at it, I mean, it's something that you have to be aware of to really,
Yeah.
get your foot out. But, who knows? I mean, one of these things as an amplifier, if I'm a negative person, then yeah, maybe that's what I'm going to experience as an energy that I keep with me, So
Yeah.
it becomes about that reflection theory that people have been talking about for quite some time. Now, as someone who has put so much effort and dedication, into your passion and intuition, the ingenuity and engineering, into a service that has, it's such products that utilize tensor energy and are predominantly for healing. How are we so far away from understanding this within our own scientific constructs? And this is more of an opinion matter. I don't necessarily think anybody has the answer, but there are people out there like you, Peter, who are making a discernible difference, an observable difference in people's lives with the particular tools that you're creating. And yet somebody who doesn't understand this stuff might just look at that. It's a piece of metal. It's beautiful, but yeah, that's all it is. They have no, real understanding of that sort of thing. How far, again, just to reiterate, in your mind, do you think we are in terms of bringing science, merging that into the intuitive spiritualism that we're working with in respect to the tools that you create?
The way I see these tools is it's going to allow you, like if you're wearing one of these tools and you're working on even if you're still working on yourself and you're still working through the negative and you're working through it, you got to figure these tools came through as divine angelic gift. So it'll help you break through. It might take, you got to figure it's going to give you an accelerated rate to break through what you're dealing with. So it may make you face what you have to turn into from a negative to a positive in a hurry. But one of the things I've found over the last few years, especially with everything that's going on, is the tools allow you to be yourself and allow you to see reality for what it really is. So you look at the media, and you can actually look at it as if you were literally, standing back and looking at it as a third person. So now you can actually see it. It's like, are they saying the truth or are they lying? And you can almost realistically look at something and like, no, that's a lie. Okay, continue. Next. And because a lot of times what they're doing now is, this programming is what it's called, and it's programming, and they're projecting energy through these programs. And they're projecting emotional energy, and they're also projecting mind control and through the frame rate and all this other stuff that they're doing. And this stuff has actually been patented for ages. So this is not a surprise, right? So when we're going through this whole thing with, the flu, it was actually looking at things. I'm like, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. And it's like at that point you're looking at things completely differently. When you have protections and tools like this, it allows you to actually keep yourself. It keeps yourself whole without the distortion field in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it doesn't matter where the distortion field's coming from.
Because you're already centralized within what you're doing with
Correct. It allows
with the tools that you're working with. So it's
Right. It allows
basically
you
an
to,
unmovable situation in certain respects, as long as your thoughts stay
yep.
in balance, I would imagine.
Well, even wearing them, you'll actually look at the like a broadcast, and it'll make you think. But by the time you're done logically going over it, you're not emotionally manipulated anymore, and you're looking at it through a thought process, and you're allowed to actually look at it with both sides, both hemispheres of your brain. You can
Hmm.
actually say, okay, that doesn't sound right in my emotional side. Your logical side says, okay, where's the truth? Where's the documentation that you're talking about? And you can go out and research it and find it's like, okay, well, they weren't telling the truth. And that vindicates what your emotions were telling you. So it
Hmm.
allows you to see both sides, both hemispheres of your brain, and it allows you to actually be more whole.
That's unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
God, I hate to say it, I'm going to use this word, but it sounds like a panacea.
They're impressive tools. It's like I said, they're the most powerful tools I've seen, and a lot of people that utilize them say the same thing.
Now, speaking of tools, again, as we've been for this show here, you have pendants and you have tensor rings and so forth. These things I can wear on my body and bring
Yes.
with me wherever I go. Can you tell me a little bit about what we're seeing behind you in respect to this this constructal, this pyramid that you have behind you? What do we have there?
That is a copper Giza pyramid. The footprint of that is 10 feet by 10 feet, so it takes up a good size of the room. That's our healing room. We do healing in there, and we have a nice lounge chair. You lie down in the pyramid, and as you can see in the top, you have all the larger tensor rings,
Yes.
basically in the vortex of energy, pushing that torus energy down into you while you're inside of it. And there's probably a dozen tensor rings, and there's a 2 foot diameter healing coil underneath the seat,
Uh-huh.
and we have part of what we discussed in the bio is a Merkaba. So the
Yes.
Merkaba, let's see if I can do this real quick here. I'll go up a little bit here. Yeah, so you can see there's a Merkaba right in here. It's about 10 inches, 12 inches tall, inside of the pyramid. And through muscle testing, a friend of mine, he's bought 4 of these things so far,
No
and he
kidding.
gifted a couple. He gifted 2 of them away, and there's another. He has 2 pyramids. He has a wooden pyramid and he has a copper pyramid,
Huh.
and he has tested it through dowsing on muscle test and dowsing that it actually amplifies the energy of the pyramid and just the resonance out of the pyramid about tenfold. So it
Wow.
actually creates a massive resonance energy field inside that pyramid.
And for all of you out there who, think that Preston Nichols may have been making up the Delta T antenna, obviously had a physical model. He had several physical models of the damn thing. There's a lot to be said about, especially what Peter's talking about here in respect to these different spirals of energy and how we're working with those. You can utilize them in the most minimalistic of fashions if you're using the right materials. Now, very quickly, I know we're getting close to the end of the show, but I did want to ask you, Peter, just a shot in the dark here. Are you familiar with Preston Nichols and his involvement with the Montauk Project? Do you know who this individual is?
The name rings a bell. I can't remember. I wouldn't be able to remember all the information off the top of my head.
The reason I'm asking you is because, once he was sort of through and through with that, if you will, he lived out upstate New York on a farm where he continued to work with electronics. But his whole bent was to create, and this is going back to where I was mentioning, there are, certain electronic pieces of equipment out there that uh, encompass some sort of quantum effect. Usually there's a tube driven uh, electronic devices. So, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
something you'd maybe go out and buy in the store today. You have to find the vacuum tubes for them. But with that in mind, he created this whole room where you'd lay in the bed and you had speakers all around you. You had subsonic speakers underneath you. I mean, I think it went down to
Yeah.
like 8 hertz or something crazy like that, 7, 8 hertz that you could
Yeah.
still
Schumann.
feel. And he would put you through a meditation based on whatever music you wanted. But because of the way this whole thing was set up, I've never, ever heard or seen anything like it before. And of course, Preston Nichols, as an engineer, was somebody very unique. We can at least agree. Most people can agree on that. But
Yes.
within that, again, if you were familiar, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Maybe I'll send you a quick video at some point. You can just take a look at it and just, see
Absolutely.
what that was about, what your thoughts are on it. But pretty interesting, man. Pretty interesting. I think he was doing a lot of what you mentioned with some of this work, but doing it through sonic means specifically. Um, rather than, having other instruments and so forth. So that's why I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, it's the whole cymatics thing is everything is sound. Everything is a wavelength. You figure light is just a higher frequency of sound.
That's true. What is it, 40 times up or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. But you have to look at it. Schumann resonance is 8 hertz, right? So the planet resonates there. It changes depending on magnetic field variations on the planet, and from there all the way up through like super high energy, waves. It's just everything seems to be a wave from our perception. So it's one of those things. It's just at that point, what do? We just look and try to understand.
There's a lot of information that's come out recently in respect to what light actually is, whether it's a wave or it's molecules, if it's both. I mean, people go back and forth, but there's a lot of information that's popped up recently that really, really supports the idea that it's probably a wave. It's pretty interesting to think about. Peter, before we go, is there anything you'd like to tell our audience at large? If you wouldn't mind, of course, within this, just kind of reiterating where they can find you, how they can contact you. Again, folks, this is in the description. You can find below, but just to have the verbal acknowledgement, that would be awesome. And anything else you want to share with us, Peter?
Okay, so one thing I want to share, and we didn't cover it real quick, is the shielding pendants, which are the Metatron, Michael, PTSD, and the multidimensional one we have been basically tested as, like we're telling you how it creates a shield just above your emotional field.
Yes.
Those were tested, muscle tested to 95% effective, and actually tested to 100% effective against electromagnetics by MUFON.
Interesting.
A MUFON individual had an electromagnetic field tester and looking for energies going on in the room. And they basically came up to the individual that was wearing one of my pendants and put it right up to the pendant. Nothing. It went dead. Zero energies right there. So that kind of puts things in a little bit of perspective. So I just thought that would be fun to kind of point out.
That's really interesting. And again, yes, it's a little anecdotal at the moment, but again, we can find the guy who was wearing it and he can corroborate that. And the person from MUFON could corroborate that. Yeah. At the same time, the fact that you can sit here and say that these things have happened, that's a huge step for people to kind of understand and hold certain comprehension on. I think that's huge because a lot of times we're just sold the product. And I'm not saying that that's what you're here doing in the sense, I mean, we're promoting that product, because there's a reason for that. It's not anything vain, as we've seen, the magnetic, rings and so forth of the past. People are trying to make money, but you've come to the table with something more substantial in respect to the workings of these particular pieces, which again, I think lends a very heavy significance and something that people should take seriously when they look at what you have to offer. I certainly wouldn't say that about, every person that comes on here and has something to pitch. I truly believe in what you have as a product. And I'm dead serious, folks. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try one of these out and I'm going to let you know how it goes.
Absolutely. No, it's when I started the company, it was, I registered the company 5 years ago, and the company I registered was Energies of Service. The energies I'm working with, and I'm putting the tools together to be of service. It's like I'm not here to, be a millionaire. I'm here to get the tools out to as many people as I possibly can. It's one of those things. It takes a lot of time and effort to create the product. So it is what it is. But these tools are there to help people progress in what we're doing. And I really don't feel that I would be getting connections to Metatron or Michael or Archangel Michael if I was doing something negative. It's one of those things that just like, I don't think I'd be getting connections from archangels if that was the case. That's why I do it. I'm here
very
help.
Interesting truth in what you just said. To lay on that as a conviction, I wouldn't be getting these messages from these higher archangels if that were the case. I mean, there's just so much to be said about a statement like that. You know what I mean? In the most positive of ways. Absolutely fantastic. Now, I know we've only brushed the surface of what you've been doing and what you've worked with. Certainly, I'd love to have you back. You don't have to answer me now on the show in case you hated me. You can tell me later. No, I'm not doing that with this guy again. Your hair's too long. You might as well cut your beard. Whatever you have to say. But at any rate, if you'd like to come back on, I certainly would love to have you on. Of course, I'm definitely going to plan to have your wife, Vivian Chauvin, back on. She was an absolute fantastic interview. I just, even today, I've listened to that one over and over, and I get something more out of that, just to give your wife a little bolster here, because I think she deserves it 100% the same way that you deserve that same attention, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure with you tonight. I want to thank you for coming on here and joining with all of us to talk about what you've been doing. And God, keep up the good work, mate. Keep up that good work, because we need it. We absolutely need it in this world and this time. And for those of us who are on the path or just getting a foot onto the path, direction is always imperative. For most of these folks. I'd say 99% of people need a little bit of direction. And with one of your tools, one of the instruments that you've created, there's a cardinal point, that an arrow is pointing to with that, so to speak.
The tools help. If you're starting out on your path, these tools will help eliminate some of the distortion that there is out there in the spiritual community, trying to sell you on this or sell you on that, or this meditation is better than that meditation. It allows you to actually, if you're a starseed, you're going to resonate with one person over somebody else and not be sold on something that's not right for you. There are all these different variables out there for every individual, whether it's like I said, a starseed or angelic source or whatever. You're going to resonate with it, with what's out there. The pendants help you protect your energy, and your field and your vibration, so you're not going to be impacted by everything else going out there, and you can actually focus on how this makes you feel. How does that particular person make me feel? How does that particular meditation or that particular retreat feel, to me? Not as a sale and like, oh, that looks really interesting, what should I do?
Right.
No, how does it feel to you? And like, feel it in your heart. How does it feel to you?
So that, again, that's, not to extend this here, but just to, mention what you're saying here. You're taking out all that outside distraction. So you have the opportunity, the real opportunity, to focus on your inner, not that inner monologue, narrative, whatever, but the inner work that sometimes we do have difficulty with because we are so distracted, inundated, and saturated with everything around us. Absolutely fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much, mate. I'm going to take you off for a moment. If you have to go, I understand. If you can stick around for a moment, I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera. Either way, Thank you so much once again for joining us this evening, and happy holidays to you and yours, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. It was great to be on.
Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, brother. All right, folks, that was absolutely incredible. And I still feel like we only touched the surface. I did mention that towards the end here, but I really, truly feel there's much more to get into this as a total, as a whole here. I will invest in one of these Tensor rings that Peter's created. I would love, or the pendant, whatever feels right for me. I'm going to kind of sit on it for a day or two and see how that feels, what works. But I'm going to tell you all about it because, I really feel that Peter has something here within his wheelhouse. He's been working hard on something that will benefit humanity. And there are people who are out there attempting to do this, but I truly feel that Peter has something special, and it's something that is more than likely resonant in respect to our signatures, energetic signatures. So it can be a very personal affair if it's not inherently so, which it just may be. Regardless, I'm happy I made it through the show. I'm glad my voice didn't give up. We're doing all right over here, folks. Just to give you a quick update. We are still working on that Montauk documentary. I do have more people who have come into the mix. I tell you this every time I talk to you, but it's the absolute truth. They come out of the woodwork and they are interested in talking about this. Now, it's shaping into be a very different documentary than what you might think we're going to do, which is fine because it goes in a very positive direction. We're still going to keep those aspects of healing. But what you see in this finished product will be much different than anything else that's out there concerning the Montauk Project or the survivors that are still around talking and recalling some of those experiences that they had gone through. In the meantime, folks, we will be back again next week. I have Kishara coming back on. Yes, I had this show out. I've been trying to get new internet. Unfortunately, we don't have anything in this area, but I have been with the all of being able to do that once something becomes available. And, we did all right tonight. No dropouts, no issues, no lag, at least not from this end. Please, if you have anything you want to share with myself or with Peter, go down into the description one more time and you will find our contact information there. Definitely check out his website. There's plenty to read through and there's plenty to see. He's also done other interviews on YouTube. You can find him quite a few channels from what I have seen. So please look into Peter Benson and his work, and I will continue to do the same. In the meantime, folks, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Stay warm out there. Of course, if you're up in, I don't know, Midwest all the way to the East Coast, I know we're getting one hell of a storm. Stay warm. Grab a few candles in case you lose power. And above all, happy holidays to all of you out there in Dark Hour Paranormal Land. Until next time, folks. What do they say? They say something. What do they say? Oh, that's right. Ciao.